But first, who's this guy? And why is he totally central to understanding what's going on in American news right now, even though he's been dead for almost 45 years? He's, of course, Herbert Hoover. Now you recognize him, right? Given what just happened to the emergency loans that didn't get made to the big three automakers, I owe a debt of thanks to Dick Cheney, not kidding, for reminding us all why it is so important to keep Hoover in mind right now. Dick Cheney this week reportedly went up to Capitol Hill. He had a closed-door meeting with his fellow Republicans. He told them that if they blocked the rescue of the auto industry, quote, "we will be known as the party of Herbert Hoover forever." That's a bad thing. Hoover is a political epithet in bad economic times because his response to the Depression was to first do nothing and then do stuff that made it worse. The country needed massive federal spending to stimulate demand and keep people working. Hoover cut spending. The government had an economic responsibility to borrow some money and get credit moving. Hoover picked that awesome time to balance the budget. Everything was going the wrong direction economically, so the government needed to make some big, bold moves in the opposite direction. Hoover picked that time to proclaim his own impotence, telling Congress in 1930, quote, "economic depression cannot be cured by legislative action or executive pronouncement." I'm Herbert Hoover. I can't do anything helpful. How about I hurt the economy some more instead because of my dumb, moralistic, ideologically driven, ignorant, short-term, self-serving bad ideas? I'll take this depression and make it not just good, but great. That's the ticket, the Great Depression. And how does Hooverism or neo-Hooverism apply to us on this big full moon Friday night in 2008? Well, last night, Senate Republicans, who spent the last 8 years setting huge piles of taxpayer money on fire for nothing in return but two ill-advised endless wars, they decided that they were the party of reduced spending and fiscal responsibility. Hell, high water? Feh. Last night, with both hell and high water all around, Senate Republicans killed $14 billion of emergency loans to save GM, Ford, and Chrysler. Why? Because they've apparently looked back at the Great Depression and decided that Hoover is their role model. Of course the government shouldn't spend money to shore up its own economy and save jobs in a downturn. That might make economic sense. Couldn't do that. The Senate Republicans are counting on our economic and historical ignorance to win short-term political points for refusing to spend government money on something that it hurts to spend money on. Nobody wants to bail anybody out, but sometimes you have to. And frankly, they are seizing the ideological opportunity to crusade against the unions and against the very idea of Americans making good wages at their jobs. Leading the GOP charge, Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee. Corker's only previous claim to political fame was the race-baiting Call Me Harold ad that he ran against Harold Ford in the 2006 Senate campaign. His new claim to fame? Union busting, with an estimated 3 million jobs on the line.
They were willing to make no concessions, zero, and let these companies fall into peril as they are now. To me, as I wake up today, it's pretty surreal to me, actually.
Yeah, surreal. A memo circulated among Senate Republicans on Wednesday called for Republicans to, quote, stand firm and take their first shot against organized labor. The UAW president, United Auto Workers president Ron Gettelfinger, unsurprisingly, has a somewhat different take on what happened.
Senator Corker admitted to our people on the ground there that the other discussions over wages were largely about politics within the GOP caucus. They thought perhaps they could have a twofer here, maybe. You know, pierce the heart of organized labor while representing the foreign brands.
So we're facing a looming 3 million job economic sinkhole. Even if you don't care about those specific workers, those specific American lives, those specific American companies, those specific jobs, even if you don't care about that, everyone fears that a 3 million job sinkhole could suck the world into a depression, not just us. And in the face of that, the Senate Republican caucus decided to block the rescue plan to make a principled point about how much they want to be like Hoover in the Great Depression and how much they want to lower American wages. Huzzah! Democratic Senator Chris Dodd couldn't believe it either.
The idea that we would say last evening that the only issue was to say to working families in this country that you're the ones we're asking more of. We're asking you to take less in your wages and benefits at a time when you're already suffering because of the disparity in income in this country. It was rather incredible to me that that's the one demand that was being insisted upon.
Traders in China were duly terrified. The stock market there crashed overnight. Our own markets were spared today because President Bush and Henry Paulson say they may still save the big three with some of that so-called TARP money. That's $700 billion we've all lost track of. And therefore, the world might not suffer the fate that was queued up by Senator Corker and his friends in the Republican caucus in the Senate. So here's what we're down to. The Democrats will not have a filibuster-proof 60-seat majority come January. The country is on the brink of something so bad that it is not clear if or when it would end. The Senate Republicans are determined that Hoover was right in the 1930s. Matthew Iglesias at the Center for American Progress calls it neo-Hooverism. The strategy is to dig in their ideological heels and stop the Democratic-dominated government from counteracting what is already the longest recession since Hoover's Great Depression. The Democrats' charge, of course, is to find some steel for their spines to stop the neo-Hooverites from using their filibuster power in the Senate to drag us down into depression the way their party's original Hoover did the first time around. You want to live through the same kind of America that this guy left us? Have you read Grapes of Wrath? Joining us now.